Hi, and welcome back to the Toronto International Film Festival. Thanks for joining us for one of our two Q&A sessions with the Directors of Films and Shortcuts Program 5 here at TIFF. My name is Jason Anderson, and I'm the programmer for Shortcuts. I'm very excited to be joined by four of the filmmakers with films in the program. I'd like to ask each of them to introduce themselves and say which film they're here with them at TIFF. Start with Alfie.
Hey, how are you doing? I'm a Leeds-based writer-director based here in the UK, and we're here with short film Hanging On. It's a docudrama, kind of artistic docudrama that spotlights the strength of a community who are faced with eviction. It's kind of a short film that reminds us about the struggles of people who are slipping through the cracks of society and kind of questions what it means to have a home.
Great, thank you. And actually, it's exciting for this particular edition. We have two pretty fresh alum, and Renee is back as a three-peat. Nice work.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be back. I'm Renee. I'm here with a short animated film called Soft Animals. It's a film about two ex-lovers who run into each other at a train station.
Terrific, thanks. And Paul.
My name is Paul Shkordoff, and I'm the writer-director of 12 Hours, and it's a film that follows a healthcare worker sequestered to her hotel room on her day off in between shifts.
Great, thank you. And also Ben.
My name is Ben Pearce. The film is A Few Miles South, and it's about two people in 1910 trapped in a tent in the middle of the Arctic.
Thank you all for being here, and thanks so much for sharing your films with us and with the audience, because they're also terrific, and we're just really pleased with the whole selection, and grateful that you all found the time and energy to make new films given all that's going on in the world. But yeah, I mean, first of all, I'd just love to hear from each of the filmmakers about how these films began, kind of the things that inspired you and why you felt so compelled to tell these stories and share them with us. So we can start again with Alfie.
Yeah, so I guess the story was born out of just being at home in the pandemic and stuff. But I first came about the story about this community who lived pretty close to me, about how they were doing a campaign to try and save their homes. But during the pandemic, the kind of circumstances changed for them. And they were basically just trying to create more momentum to try and create awareness for it. So I came up with this idea of I kind of wanted to think of an idea that kind of spoke higher than the news that was going on at the minute, because with everything like COVID going on, that was the only thing that was kind of hitting headlines. And I kind of wanted to think of something that maybe would grab the attention of audiences and people, but with their story at the heart of that.
Great, thank you. Oh yeah, it's such an imaginative approach to the subject. It's stunning. So we'll talk some more about that too. And it's funny because I'm thinking, of course, like I think just thinking about COVID, and certainly many of the films are, we don't know many that are directly about COVID, but certainly COVID adjacent, certainly, or just something that kind of about the experience. And certainly I feel that about Soft Animals and Renee as sort of like it's maybe a sort of a slightly post-lockdown kind of feel to this film too. But if you talk about how Soft Animals began.
Yeah, it's kind of it's my way shortest film, but kind of took the longest because it started as a school project before lockdown when I was at the National Film and Television School. And it was kind of it was a personal story. Is about this feeling of like seeing somebody who you used to be really close and intimate with, and then suddenly it's been some time, and so they're a different, they're a stranger to you now, but then you have all these memories and sort of that lost connection with them. And so I say that it's a personal story, and but I sort of took a break of 2 years to make this other film, and then went back to it during COVID because I had some free time and some lot of time to sort of reflect on that. So that's when I went back to the film and sort of just sat alone in my studio. I think animation is a bit easier to make during the pandemic. It was kind of a a good time to revisit the film and finish it.
It was great, and it ends up being. I mean, there's a timeliness to it too, as sort of people kind of like the characters in the film kind of re-engage with each other in their lives. It's really got a poignance to it, I think, as a result.
Oh yeah, I hadn't thought about that, about sort of this anxiety, this weirdness of coming back into the world, out of our rooms, out of our shells. Yeah.
And I'd love to hear from Paul about 12 Hours, which is, I mean, quite directly about that kind of experience, and really is sort of a kind of really just an amazing story kind of happening in the sort of thick of the moment.
Yeah, I think like everyone, you're like terrified, you're anxious, you're holed up in your house, and you're just trying to direct that energy somewhere. I was originally working on another short film, and then that just, I think as a result of the pandemic, just kept hitting walls, and then starting to think about what was obviously going around all of us and myself. And I saw these selfies, these photos that Time Magazine had posted about these selfies that healthcare workers were taking of themselves during or after their work shift. And it was just kind of showing the sort of the wear and the bruising that was on their face. And I just remember seeing those images, kind of like bookmarking it, because it just felt like this like really apt depiction of this moment, kind of in its ambiguity. It felt like it was kind of depicting this kind of trauma that they were experiencing, but also it felt like it was proof of their resilience as well. And I like that sort of duality in terms of like how something can sort of be almost violent, but then also sort of be a kind of a mark of like our ability to get through something. And I think I just had that image in my head for a while, didn't really know what to do with it. And then, yeah, things just started to grow from there. I think out of the frustration of this other project, with my producer, we started to speak with a lot of healthcare workers. And we were really fortunate enough to meet Marian Sawchuk, who's an emergency nurse. And during the freaking heart of the pandemic was incredibly generous, incredibly patient with us, and would take the time out of her day to speak with us on her off days. And it was this kind of thing in passing where she discussed like her routine that she had to undertake every day, when she was leaving work, going back home. And just that routine itself felt not familiar to me, but my mom was a nurse growing up, and I just remember, just the sort of how difficult the drudgeries of, when you work multiple 12-hour shifts during the week, and just that in-betweenness. And I just thought that sort of that routine, that kind of in-betweenness wasn't something that we were seeing or really talking about or hearing about during everything. And I think I sort of just latched on to that. And then we spoke with a lot of healthcare workers, a lot of doctors, a lot of nurses who were incredibly generous with their time. And I don't know, I guess you just use film as an excuse to make sense of something that is like unknowable or mysterious to you. And I was trying to make sense of this, this moment, obviously, as I'm still trying to do, as I know a lot of people are still trying to do as well. But yeah, film felt like a nice excuse to work through some of the fears and anxieties of the moment. And I really liked that in-betweenness of something that felt close to me, but something that also felt like it wasn't being discussed or sort of depicted in any capacity. So we just kind of used that as our launch point to just kind of explore the story further, and yeah, everything in the story, in the script, is taken directly from research, is taken directly from Marianne's routine herself, and other doctors and healthcare workers' routine as well. So yeah, once we got onto that, we're just like, oh, I think maybe there's something there, and then just tried to explore it as far as we could.
It's amazing. Thanks so much. And it's funny because I'm thinking like how, Ben's story in A Few Miles South takes place, more than 100 years ago, but there's certainly some weird resonances with this piece too. Certainly as a sort of macabre tale of two characters in very close quarters and things going pretty squirrely. So, but I'd love to hear from Ben about how this film began.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a bit of everything. I think it was like lots of people, I was just kind of wanted to escape for a bit. So I started reading all the kind of old stories of like Arctic adventures when I was a kid. And I think reading it from an adult's eye, I just saw all these leaders as kind of maniacs and it's like, self-obsessed, arrogant. And I just wanted to, I kind of wanted to have fun with that really. I was also at the time at home living above an alcoholic who every day someone would bring him, a bottle of drink. And so I just started thinking a bit about self-destruction and the people that enable that. So there was a bit of that. I also, it's a bit of everything really, because I think in and amongst that, I wanted to tell a love story between these two guys. And I remember hearing about Robert Perry and Matthew Henson, who were the first people to the North Pole, who I'd never really heard about. And they had this 20-year relationship, and it was definitely manipulative and kind of definitely opportunistic on Matthew Henson's part. No, Perry's part, sorry. So I started kind of playing around with that. So it was a bit of everything, really. It was a mixture of all sorts, I think. But they were the big things. Like I wanted to escape. I also wanted to tell something that had that claustrophobia that everyone was feeling, really. I also wanted to do something that felt simple, but it turned out not to be.
They never do turn out simple. Yeah.
I know. So, but it was all those kinds of things, I think, kind of came together. There's also some dark stuff in there that I probably don't want to dig too deep into because I know what it really says about me. But there was all sorts.
It's funny because I was thinking like, it is a love story on one level too. I mean, there's a sort of certainly a care and tenderness between these two characters in what becomes fairly extreme circumstances, but there's a tenderness there for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think, and I actually wrote it in 2 hours, and I didn't do a second draft. It just kind of came out. I think it was just and there was definitely that element that these, it's the people that were coming to this guy's door who lived beneath me. He'd always say there were people who said they loved him, and I'm sure they did, but it was this enabling this self-destruction and that I just found fascinating and also quite tragic and moving as well.
Yeah, but that's him. Again, just so pleased to have all the films here in the program, and I'd love to get a chance to hear from the filmmakers about kind of the process of creating them, because I mean, there's things never are as simple as maybe you intended at the beginnings, and starting with Hanging On, which is such an extraordinary sort of image visual device to sort of convey this experience. And I'd love to hear from Alfie about basically sort of collaborating with this community and these people there and also sort of gaining that trust to do this extraordinary thing that you have in the film.
Yeah, thank you for selecting the film as part of TIFF. So yeah, like you say, it's all down to trust really, because the film features the audio recordings of the residents who live in this close kind of knit community, and then it's kind of overlaid these striking visuals. So how it was kind of approached was kind of me initially meeting the person, so Cindy, who's in charge of the campaign. I kind of just wanted to help them in any way I could, and that film is one of those most powerful mediums, I think, anyway, or art form there is. And it's kind of something that everyone during the pandemic went to for escapism and to kind of to heal, if you want. So yeah, I kind of went like, I want to make a film, but I'm not really sure what it'd be. But I then kind of approached them like, look, I've got this idea where I will literally want you to hang from a crane. You're literally hanging onto your home like a hose pipe or the washing line using a crane and visual effects. But I mean, I kind of put it as if it was surprising, because I mean, they were like, they've never acted before, because it features the residents themselves. So yeah, I kind of just threw it out there, like this might happen, it might not. And as time went on and we did the audio recordings kind of separately, so we were able to build trust. But it's one of those, it's quite a personal thing to at one point I was a stranger. So to allow me into their homes, to open up about their situation, how they've lived there the whole lives, the memories, the stories, is something that took, I think it was over a year from start to finish, that kind of thing. So, but we were able to throw a microphone in, with everything going on and kind of communicate through like glass or at a distance. So that was fine. But yeah, I mean, it was a challenge. The whole thing was a challenge because having them from a crane and stuff, like the weather, which you don't think about as well. So like in between, there was like a snow flurry happening, which I don't think might have cancelled the shoot. And I mean, we were shooting at like -1 degrees, which I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but the ground was frozen basically. So yeah, for them and just for them to even want to do it, and especially like to try and kind of get them involved, because a few people dropped out a few days before. So it was like, right, okay, we just need to kind of come together, which was kind of at the heart and the message of the film as well.
It really is amazing, and it's such a beautiful tribute to these people and this place. But it's just like to I mean, again, just to kind of involve them in the way they do, and to sort of kind of visualize their experience in this way. I'm really happy that they were game.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is, because it's the kind of visual representation of exactly kind of what they're going through. So it needed to be kind of striking and like to get attention.
It's amazing. Thank you. And Renee, I mean, one thing, I mean, as I said, you're a Shortcuts three-peat in recent years, and we're always thrilled to have your films. And because I mean, often they're just so different from each other too. I mean, there's certainly things that sort of connect it with your previous work, but the new film again feels like some fresh technique and things that you're kind of experimenting with for yourself. I mean, what was the process for this? I mean, it sounds like it did take a long time.
Yeah. Thanks, Jason. Yeah, it's kind of, so the film is made out of sort of oil paintings and charcoal drawings, like very tactile and handmade kind of film, which is what I'm really interested in with animation, because I came from a painting background, so I really like to bring that into movement and storytelling. And yeah, so the film is about these two people and the memories that they have of each other and the traces that they leave. So the way that I made it is each shot is made on like one piece of paper, and I would make a drawing, take a picture, erase it, and then make another drawing on top. So it kind of leaves the marks of the erased like image behind it, which I think kind of ties in nicely with what the film's about. And yeah, it's I mean, it's called Soft Animals because it's about bodies and this imagined sexual encounter between these two people. And for me, like the paint and the kind of texture of paint and that kind of thickness and richness, like really kind of feels, yeah, I don't know, like bodies and sex and everything. It all kind of like feels that kind of icky grossness of like touching. Yeah, that's where those techniques kind of came in, because I think for me it's important that the animation technique like ties into what the film is about or is trying to say.
Oh yeah, there's a great sort of harmony of that, and again that sort of fun. I mean, I think it's a word you've used for your own work, but that fundamental squishiness of
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
The sound designs as yeah, it's fun.
That's great. And then shifting to Paul in 12 Hours, and again this, I mean, I think it was such an incredible performance by your lead, and just kind of what you were able to achieve with you know, the sort of authenticity of this, but also I'm sure that the big challenge of working, you know, with COVID protocols in this like obviously really tight space, and just I'm sure not much time. So, yeah,
it's tough. Honestly, yeah, like I felt like constraints are the sort of most freeing thing for me. I need them. Otherwise, like I get paralyzed with like choice and options. So like once we sort of landed on like, okay, this film is just going to be set in a hotel, I think that allowed us to think more creatively about how to approach her routine. And like, I think we wanted banality to sort of figure into the story quite prominently, and how to use that in a kind of dramatic, compelling way. So that felt like scary because you're working in COVID protocols and you're in a really tight, confined space. So you're trying to be as careful and safe and sensible as you possibly can be. But then on a creative level, it felt like the most freeing thing in the world of just like, well, I can only shoot in this room. So how do you create texture? How do you create variety? How do you sort of find an arc within the story when you're locked in the same room? And then, yeah, Lara was just, I mean, great. Was just a professional, and was just like, you know, I learned so much for her, and she brought and brings a wealth of experience and wisdom and curiosity. And she has, you know, we would discuss certain things. We would discuss in between takes, different ways to approach things, because I think for her, it very much matters, you know, what choices and decisions the character is making and why. So it felt like there were so many different ways we could take it, even though the performance feels really nuanced. I think Lara brings so much strength and conviction in such a really simplistic way. And it was just one of those things of just, talk to her if she felt like she wanted to know more about something, but also just get the hell out of the way and let her do her thing. Like, I don't need to intrude. I trusted her 1,000%. And that was a really easy decision, just because she's so incredibly talented and generous. And honestly, I just tried to not get in the way. The less I said, the less I did. I think I would be doing I was doing the film a favor. I think the less I spoke, and just like, okay, just let Lara do her thing, and like that's gonna help it.
That's an important. I think that's such a great lesson, important thing for filmmakers, just sort of just get out of the way. Like if you have an actor working that level, just let it be. Yeah.
100%. Yeah, it was that easy. It's like, yeah. So it was an easy decision. She brought so much, and I'm really grateful that we were able to work with her on it. And yeah, I learned a lot, and it was just really a matter of just trusting her and let her embody the character and just allow for space, of chance and discovery to occur, but be there to sort of have those conversations when they felt necessary.
And that's a great segue to A Few Miles South, to think about these two fantastic performances that really contain so much. And it's amazing to see what they're able to. To really kind of ground and make real an increasingly sort of macabre and absurd and grisly situation. And I'd love to hear from Ben about kind of casting and just and kind of securing these two like really, really accomplished actors for this. Maybe to be fair, like Toby's done plenty of kind of odd things over his career and things I love, but yeah, just kind of getting them on board and kind of creating a world for them.
Yeah, it's definitely exactly the same as what Paul just said. You just get out of the way with people like that. They were just fantastic. I think that it was kind of lucky in a lot of sense that I realized when we were prepping, I was like, well, no actor can say they're busy right now. So let's just go and see if we can get our dream two people. And we really did. Like, we had them in mind right from the get-go. And we just kind of lucked out really that they were free and interested and excited enough about the project really. And then and I think it was very much about just letting them do their thing. Particularly, I think it didn't want to. It's a slightly strange one that it's a silent film, but it's not really a silent film. It's just they choose not to talk, and that always interested me. People who spend long extended periods together. It's like language kind of becomes redundant and you just start doing your thing and you can start communicating out. So then it was just with both of them exploring how you chart their relationship, how you chart what's going on in a very simple and very kind of restrained way. I didn't want it to feel slapstick or heightened in any way. And they just bring such a nuanced, quiet performance to quite a mad and extreme story, which I think it had to be, otherwise I think it would all be a bit too much. But they were both fantastic and just brought so much to it that I couldn't even really imagine. And it just made my job really easy. I just kind of go for it. So I'm super lucky.
It's amazing just how kind of, again, how funny and sweet and tender and super gross the film actually is. All these things can kind of sit next to each other somehow.
Yeah, I think also even things like, I remember having conversations with Toby about, there's one scene where he kind of goes from just being a starving person to beginning to eat himself. Just charting that, without any words, just watching his expression on his face as he kind of converts to this kind of autocad. And just, and seeing that, and he just nailed it. We chatted about it very briefly, he just kind of nailed it. It was fantastic. But without those kind of things, without him, without being able to be guided through by him, particularly in that scene, I think it wouldn't feel right, and you wouldn't buy into it, although it is quite extreme to buy into it. But yeah, I think you go along with it. I hope you do anyway.
I know I did. I'm willing to go to the gross place.
Yeah.
And it's so good. I'm so happy that we were able to share the films with audiences here. And I thank all of you for being here on this session, but also just for all you've been being able to sort of put into these films. They are really special. So that's all the time we have. But again, thanks to everyone, and thanks to the viewers. So I hope you keep watching, keep making films, and the viewers can keep on watching them. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having
you.
our film.